morning, friends. I'm Catherine, and I'm Cook from the Past and Homestead in the Woods. Those are my two channels, and that's where I'm going to be posting this particular video. So in another video, I showed how I was making applesauce. And of course, when you're making applesauce, you normally wouldn't use the peels and the cores and the seeds and all of that stuff. So those all got taken off of the apples before the applesauce was made. But why throw that away, right? I mean, you could give it to the chickens or the pigs, or put it in the compost, but you can do that later after you've made homemade apple vinegar. I did it last year and it turned out wonderful. I'm going to share that with you, what that looks like, in just a second here. But I'm going to follow right now with a clip of how I actually made set up the jars for the apple vinegar, and after that I'll show you what the steps are to then complete the process. So in the matter of 30 days you will have beautiful vinegar. And I made 7 jars just with the peelings of that Honeycrisp apples that I made the applesauce with. So we're going to continue on, and I'll show you how to then finish up the product so that you have a year or two's worth of really wonderful, healthy, good tasting apple vinegar. So I have decided that since I am going to be making apple vinegar with the peelings anyway, and this bowl is full and something needs to be done with it, I'm going to go ahead and get my vinegar going, and then I'll go back to peeling my apples for that applesauce. I'm going to move the camera so you can see what I'm doing, but it's really very easy and makes delicious cider vinegar, or apple vinegar. So here I've got my peelings. I've got 4 wide mouth quart jars. You do not want to do this in a regular mouth because you have to be able to get your hand or something into it to press down the apples. And I am actually going to get, I've got a French rolling pin that will serve that purpose. I've also got some plain brown coffee filters. Today's date has been put on them, and just the rings that go on the jars. So I'm already making a mess here, but I'm just going to fill the jars about 2/3 full with the peelings, the cores, everything that came off of these apples, and just kind of press it down. Depending on the color of the apple peels, you could end up with a beautiful pinkish color to this apple vinegar when it's done. Of course, I do have more apples to peel yet, and so I'll also be using those to make the cider vinegar. There I go again. Apple vinegar. If it was cider vinegar, it would be made with apple juice, but this is apple vinegar, so there is a difference in that. So that one's done. All right, this quart jar is about 2/3 of the way filled with the apple peels and cores and that kind of thing. The next thing you want to do is add 1/4 cup of unbleached white sugar right into the jar on top. Then you're going to fill it with clean tap water. If you have municipal water and there might be things in your water such as chlorine, you don't want to use that, then you'll need to just use some bottled water. So now I'm just using a non-metallic implement to just kind of mix the sugar in and just kind of press everything down. This one is a bamboo chopstick. All right, that is pretty much all you do. Take a coffee filter. I use the band to hold it in place. The coffee filter is there so that as this starts to ferment, the gases can come out through here, but it keeps the gnats out of here. So I'm going to be putting this on a tray towards the back of my kitchen cupboard, and it will be pulled out every 2 days or so, stirred, put the filtered paper back on, and This is going to happen over about a period of a month, and when that's done, we're going to have beautiful apple vinegar. The applesauce is still on the stove cooking down, and the kitchen is somewhat cleaned up. There's stickiness was all over the counters. It was on the floor. It's on my shirt, but I'm not going to change that until I'm done with the canning process. It was on my eyeglasses, and I had to take them off and get them cleaned up, and all of that spray from the apples being sliced and peeled and so on, it went everywhere. Anyway, I just wanted to share a little bit more about the apple vinegar that is being made as a result of peeling and coring all those apples. So it made 7 quarts of this. Now, it's not going to be a final amount of apple vinegar at 7 quarts because all of this takes up some of the space in the jar, clearly. But it's going to take a month, and it will all take, it's going to take a month, but during that month, this will all start to break down and ferment. And if you're concerned about that 1/4 cup of sugar that was in here, that is absolutely necessary to make vinegar. You absolutely need sugar for that. And so what's going to happen is the yeasts will start to ferment and break that sugar down. So it's not like we're going to get a sugary sweet apple vinegar. It's not that way at all. It's going to be completely broken down. There will be no more sugars in this whatsoever. So not to be worried about the sugar that goes in here. It's an absolute necessary to be able to do this fermentation. But I just wanted to show you, this is a bit of my apple vinegar left over from making applesauce and then vinegar last year. You can see that the pink color to it. And I used a combination of apples last year, but there were some Honeycrisp, some Spy, I forget what other brand, type of apples that I used. But anyway, got this beautiful pink color, and you can see a lot of the mother is still down in the bottom of this jar. It's absolutely delicious. It's not real tart like you get from the Mrs. Bragg's vinegar, which is really, for me in any way, hard to choke down. This is very delicious, and it's not so tart that it sort of makes your eyes roll back in your head. It's really very good. You can use it in anything where you'd use cider vinegar, delicious in salad dressing. So I just wanted to share that. So this is the applesauce that I just made October 21st of 23, and it was from the apples that made this sauce that I'm now making some homemade apple vinegar. The difference between apple vinegar and apple cider vinegar is with apple vinegar, you're just making it from the scraps of apples. With apple cider vinegar, you're making your vinegar out of apple juice. So that's the difference. It made 7 quarts just from the half bushel or so of apples and the peels. So this is what it looks like. We're now on day 2. So I made this apple vinegar, started making the apple vinegar at the same time that I was making the applesauce. I could have put all of those peelings in the refrigerator and went back the next day or 2 and made it, but it was almost just as easy, if not easier, to go ahead and get this apple vinegar going while I was preparing to make the applesauce. So what I'm going to be doing today is taking the rings and the coffee filters off, and you'll see how I did that well, you will have seen it in the segment of this video before now. And I just take it off, take the lid off, take the ring off. I'm using a bamboo chopstick and just kind of stir it around a little bit. And that's really all you do. Give it a smell. It smells good. It still smells very appley. I'm getting a very faint scent of fermentation going on already. It's about 68 degrees here in my kitchen, maybe a little bit more because of the cooking. So every 2 days, we're going to be doing that. Got one more here. So this is kind of what it looks like when you first uncover it. And I'm just going to stir it down. Mix it around a little bit, try to push everything down under the surface of the water. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to replace my coffee filter, put the ring back on, and that's it. And the reason I'm using a coffee filter is, and not just a solid cover, is you want this to air. You want it to vent while it's becoming vinegar. You don't want to put a lid on it and then some fermentation occurs and it could end up rupturing the jar. So this allows it to vent, but it also keeps the gnats out. And of course, gnats are going to love getting into that. So you need to have something that is solid enough, like a coffee filter, so that the gnats don't get in. If you use cheesecloth, they will get in through the holes, I guarantee it, and you're going to find all kinds of bugs down in your vinegar, and you do not want that. Hello friends, and welcome back. We are now 23 days into the making of the homemade apple vinegar, and I just wanted to show you here what this looks like so far. You want to be stirring this every 1 to 2 days and checking on it, making sure it's looking good. I did have to take it out of my kitchen after about a week because it actually started to ferment really well during that time because it was warm, and the gnats that came in after it were absolutely ridiculous, and I just had to get it out of my kitchen. So I put it into my cooler garage, and that did slow it down a little bit, but I'm going to be opening up the jars now and stirring them today and showing you what they look like now. And we're going to do a pH test to see if we're getting a good high quality vinegar. It needs to be a low pH, and so we'll see what that looks like. Anyway, I'm going to turn the camera around here and we can take a look inside the jars. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and take the rings and papers off of the jars. And we'll take a look inside. And again, as I said, you want to stir this and just see what it's doing every 1 to 2 days. If you miss a day or two here and there, that's fine. But you really do want to make sure it stays stirred down. You'll have a lot more success with not having any funk growing on it if you do stir it down. So I'm going to see if I can give you a close-up. There's a little bit of what is called kohm yeast, K-O-H-M, just kind of floating around on the top. That's not a problem. We're just going to stir it down. The other thing that you can do, if it makes you a little uncomfortable, is you can get maybe a clean paper towel and just kind of clean some of that off the side of the jar. But kohm yeast, K-A-H-M, is not a problem. I'm going to put a link in the description down below to another YouTuber who is much more experienced at doing fermentation than I am. I mean, she ferments everything. So I am going to do that link, and you can go and take a look. And she's got some very good instructional videos on different things to look for when it's not a problem and when you should just throw it out. But this has a very pleasant odor to it, a very pleasant aroma. I guess when I say odor, it has kind of a negative connotation, but it has a very pleasing vinegar-like aroma to it. So I'm just stirring each one of these. They've all got that same kind of kohm yeast, and again, it's very normal. It's in just about everything around us. It's just not an issue to find the kohm yeast on this. The other thing I'm going to do is do a pH check of this. I'm going to do every one of them, and I will write it down on the paper itself. So you can actually see I dated when we started this process. And so today is November 13th. So I'm going to check the pH for each one of these. I've already stirred them all. And this is the test strip paper that I use. You can get this at Amazon. I've actually seen test strip paper, pH test strip paper at Walmart I'm wanting it to say where they keep the aquarium, fish tank type supplies. So I will just get a little piece and I'm going to dip it down inside the jar, just a wee bit. And then I'm immediately going to check the pH against this. So this is looking like a 3.0 pH. Hopefully you can see that. 3.0 for this one. So I'm going to write it down on here, 3.0 pH. And each jar I'm going to do separately. They're probably going to be in the same range, but there could be some differences. I just want to keep track of it. It will also let me know if something's kind of looking a little funky too. What is this I'm seeing here? Well, I'm not seeing it. That's just a little piece of apple. I didn't want there to be a bug, and there's not. So here's the next one. You want your fingers to be clean and dry so you don't accidentally get the pH reading from something else. Dipping it in, doing a reading. This one, yeah, it's either like a 3.0 or even a 2.5. So these are very acidic. I'm going to give it a 2.5. So that is that one. And I'm going to go ahead and do all of these. If I find anything unusual, I'll stop and record it. The only other thing that I wanted to share was, if that you're finding that you're getting a lot of the apple pieces floating close to the top here and you're having issues with mold, these are a really nice thing to have. You can get these on Amazon. They are called a fermentation disc or a fermentation puck. That's what I call them. So they're like a hockey puck, but they're made out of glass. And you can put them down inside and it will keep your apple slices submerged. So that is also a possibility if you're wanting to do that. I may as well, oops, I got too much here. Check this one. pH on this one, I would say, is a good solid 3.0. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these and put them away. And really, I'm just going to keep stirring them every day or every other day. And I'm going to come back when it's time to strain these out. And we'll see you then. It is now time to strain my vinegar. It's all looking good, with two exceptions, and that's these two jars. I had put these jars out in the garage where it's a little bit cooler, plus it would be attracting less fruit flies, and it would appear that my cats got up on that table and put their little putty paws down into these jars, and not knowing what all they might have introduced to these jars with those little putty paws of theirs, I'm going to have to toss the contents of these two jars out. So I'm going to take care of that first, and then we'll come back and strain and test the pH of the remaining jars. One of the things that I do is get a paper towel and just wipe around the rim. Let me get it where you can see it. I just wipe it around the rim, and there's almost always a little bit of calm yeast that's around the edge of the jar. And so I wipe that off, and now this is really pretty clean and ready to strain. Okay, now as far as straining goes, I'm just going to strain it from the jar that it's been fermenting in into the jar where I will be storing it in. So to do that, I just need a nice clean jar. And since we're not using any metal on our process here with the fermentation, I'm going to be using a strainer that is plastic, and this funnel that is plastic, and the strainer is also non-metallic. This is a nylon strainer. Again, I got it from Amazon. It's easy to get these. They come in various sizes, but you want one that's fine enough to get the chunks, to catch the chunks in here, but you want some of the mother, some of the tiny little bits to be retained in the vinegar. So that's what those bits of apple look like after all of the fermentation is done. These are going to go to the compost, and I'm just going to dump them back in this jar and walk them out to the compost here pretty quick. I'll just take them over here for now. Okay, I've rinsed that out and I'll let it sit here. I'm going to put it aside for a moment. And let's open another jar. So you can see that there's a little bit of calm yeast in here. You can kind of see it on the side of the jar. That's fine. I'm going to take it over to the sink and just wipe it out, and then we'll strain that. Okay, I've wiped the little bit of calm yeast from the sides of the jar. Now we'll get this one emptied out also. We'll let all of those bits of apple drain and get rid of the chunks that are in the jar still. Dump that into the compost. Right, I'm going to give this a taste just to see how we're doing from a flavor profile. We know it's safe to taste. It had that pH of, I believe it was 2. It's probably going to be quite acidic. You know, it's not super acidic, and you can really taste the apple in it. So this is absolutely delicious. That's very good. Very appley. So this is this year's, well, 2023's, because it was fall 2023, so we're now into January. And I used Honeycrisp apples for this one. And in 2022's apple harvest, so this was done in February of 23, I used a different type of, let me get this close so you can see it. So this was strained and put into this jar in February of 23, and you can see it's pink. And the difference is between the different types of apples. I know for sure this was Honeycrisp, but I don't remember what this pink one was. So it was Spy and Empire perhaps, I'm not sure, but it was a different type of apple that did that. So I'm going to go ahead and strain all of these. That's really good. You have to remember that for next year. Those Honeycrisp apples made really delicious apple tasting vinegar. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these, and then I'll come back. I did want to point out that I rinsed the strainer and the funnel in between each addition. All right, that's all I'm going to get into this jar. So move that out of the way. I'm going to go find another jar because I wasn't sure how much I was going to get, but this is quite a bit. So I will come back once everything has been strained. I am going to be testing the pH of my vinegar now. I've got a quart on this side, and this one is, well, it's probably quart too. I'm just reusing a apple cider vinegar bottle. But these are the pH test strips. Got them on Amazon. This is the box they come in. This is a kombucha and fermentation pH test strips. So apple cider vinegar runs, white vinegar for that matter, can be a 2.0 to a 3.0 generally. So let's see what we've got here. I'll just test this one. It's just easier to get to. And so this one, if you can see, is a solid 2.0 pH. So that is absolutely perfect for this vinegar. And doing a taste test of this vinegar. It's very delicious. It tastes a lot like apple. It's a very lovely appley tasting vinegar. So our vinegar making for this year was a success. These were Applecrisp apples, and I do say that they make a better apple vinegar than the other ones that I used last year. And I don't remember which ones those were. I unfortunately did not record it. That is so good. So I'm just going to put these on the shelf. You don't need to refrigerate these. These are good just as they are on the shelf. You don't see apple cider vinegars on the shelf in the grocery store with any special seals on them. They're not refrigerated. They are good at room temperature just like this. And so Thank you for joining me on this little experiment with our apple vinegar this year. And we'll see next year, maybe we'll do a different type of apple. Thank you for joining me on Homestead in the Woods, and I'll see you on the next video.